if Mahatma Gandhi would be alive, he would have been a Bitcoin maxi. Bitcoin is all about self-reliance. You're in the system, you rely on yourself. There's not going to be someone bailing you out.
Today's guest, George, took a seven-figure personal bet on what he thought was magic internet money in 2012 when Bitcoin was trading at a mere $20. Bitcoin prior to that was trading even below $1 in 2010. And the world and his family probably thought he was crazy.
The comfort level of owning a Bitcoin is disproportionate into amount of time you dedicate studying it. I guarantee you, once you start going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and learning about how it's constructed and such, you will be putting more and more into it.
What do you think Indians can do or should invest in outside of simply buying Bitcoin in this next 10 years or so?
I've been to 80, 90 countries and meet with regulators. Always fascinated that a country of India with so many scientists, mathematicians, affinity of gold, Bitcoin is not thriving here. It's like natural that it should be thriving here.
Bitcoin is going to be $1 million. What gives you the confidence? So, welcome to season 4 of the Blume podcast. This year's theme was Destiny Avenged. So, the idea was to call upon a founder's destiny and see whether they actually ended up avenging it. And I think George's story today will be a remarkable example of that. This season was brought to you with the support of IDFC First Bank, who's been a generous supporter, Ultrahuman, which is our portfolio company. They make these smart rings, and we can talk about them later. So today's guest, George, took a 7-figure personal bet on what he thought was magic internet money in 2012 when Bitcoin was trading at a mere $20, right? For people who remember, Bitcoin prior to that was trading even below $1 in 2010, right? And the world and his family probably thought he was crazy. Today, George Kikvadze is the vice chairman of BitFury Group, and he saw his hedge fund job just disappear. And the last day of his job at his hedge fund was ironically the day that Satoshi Nakamoto published the Bitcoin whitepaper. It was October 31st. Maybe everyone thought it was a Halloween joke. We are here on the anniversary of that very event, and George is, getting fired from his hedge fund. And then over a decade later plus, the scorecard is remarkable. What was BitFury with his co-founder Val has today spawned into 2 NASDAQ-listed companies worth billions, a strategic NVIDIA partnership, Europe's leading AI chip maker, and a portfolio that proved that building infrastructure beats just chasing the price chart on Bitcoin. The ride was brutal though, and that's why he wrote a book about it. And it's no different from any of the entrepreneurial journeys you might have heard in India or from your friends from the startup world. And the trade-off was, should you hold on to 300,000 Bitcoins or build this empire? And you know where we've ended up. And so George, has captured this extraordinary journey in this book. And coincidentally, and we're privileged that today is the global launch on which you actually get this on Amazon in the US. It's actually not available on Amazon India, I checked. It's only on Kindle, I think, next week. So you'll have to wait till you get this book. The title is And Then You Win, a startup's untold story of grit, grind, and glory. And Then You Win was actually inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi's quote, where Gandhi says, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. And so George today actually came to India not just to do this podcast, but to say thank you for his inspirational source, visited Mani Bhavan, said hello to Gandhi ji in spirit, and took a few pictures with him, and here we are. So it's a story of building in Bitcoin's earliest days, hard-won lessons for tomorrow's builders, some of whom are sitting here. George, welcome to the Blume podcast.
Thank you very much, Karthik.
So I think I'm going to walk you quickly through the journey in 4 or 5 parts. Let's go to the earliest days. So when you look at the day that you were fired being when Nakamoto published it, have you ever thought through this journey that this is what destiny means?
Of course not. So, here I am running this Russia and Ukraine operation of a large US-based hedge fund, private equity fund, and kind of top of the world. I'm 32, doing these mega deals. And, the global financial crisis hits. You guys remember the big Volkswagen Porsche bet, the kind of went crazy, and many others, AIG, Lehman. And the founder of Your Capital, Jamie Dimon, has called me in New York, and I already knew that there were a lot of redemptions. There was, blood on the streets. Went out Cipriani, and he said, George, we love you, but the fund is down, and we just need to shore up and go back to basics. And Jamie's been my mentor, and one of the things he said, think of the next big thing. And that kind of sort of stayed with me, because it was sort of a complete reinvention. And I took a year off, went on traveled the world. By the way, whenever you have these type of moments where you're high and fly and then kind of life throws you under a bus, go and self-reflect, spend time in nature or go travel. It's really a big decompression and just sort of switching your mentality on things, because during that you can find an answer in terms what to do next. So I traveled a lot, went to like 60 countries, and ended up coming back and became a big investor in agriculture of all the places in Ukraine. So built up a portfolio of lots of land, so I got to appreciate the power of production of land, the scarcity value of that. And then at a certain stage when we exited that sort of an investment, a friend of mine kept pestering me about this Bitcoin and Bitcoin and Bitcoin. I'm like, listen, I have no idea what it is, but I'll study it up. And sure enough, Cyprus banking crisis happened. I don't know how affected India, but in Europe, that was like a big wake-up moment, because all of a sudden you had your accounts being frozen, not being to take out. And sure enough, interesting, Bitcoin shot up from $20 to like $200. And I'm kind of numbers guy, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting, like what's going on here? And I started exploring and contacted our classmates on West Coast. I contacted Hardeep, Travis, Jagerson Ty, and Divesh Makan. And talking to these guys, Divesh said, George, forget about Buffett and all these guys. Big clients of mine, serious tech guys, are investing in it. So I'm like, okay, this is like serious stuff, And I've kind of started reading up, went on a Khan Academy, and more I realized that this was really something profound. It's sort of from mathematical beauty of it, the cryptography, the decentralized sort of a nature of it. Because I grew up in Soviet Union, and everything collapsed. Everything collapsed. The life savings of my parents evaporated overnight, and I kind of had this distrust towards the system, the establishment that could just throw you under the bus. And things connected, and in 2013 I decided to place the bet and went all in with BitFury.
Awesome. So that explains some of the history. I think you brought in elements of this growing up in the Soviet Union, seeing it collapse. I think that is a very powerful trigger for why you believe in an asset class. Not just speculate, but believe. And that belief is obviously clear, given how much of your life you've given to this. Second, you talked about being a math major, and obviously you understood this from as you said, a philosophical lens. So I get that. And then your boss's, wisdom of like, look where the next big thing is going to come. And it seems like all of that magically came together.
Another interesting point, so Bitcoin has this 21 million Bitcoins ever to be. And the number 21 has always been following me throughout my entire life. I am born on the 21st. My house is on the 21st. 21 million Bitcoins. Number 21 has always been, like, I remember as a kid, like my parents, like sometimes going in and betting on a lottery, they would always go and bet on 21, so my mom's car was 21. So this number 21 followed me. My nickname as a kid was Buka, starting with a B. So I'm like, crap, okay, you have Bitcoin B, 21. So it was, I don't know, in a very spiritual, philosophical way, as if this thing was already there. I was just waiting to step into this.
So what do you mean it wasn't destiny? It is of course destiny.
That's what it is. Now, you kind of connect these dots. So my thing, you always kind of need to listen. The world gives you these signs, and you need to connect those dots, and you need to do it yourself.
So you brought up two interesting things when we chatted this morning. But before that, the book title, Then You Can Win. What is this Georgian who grew up in Russia, working in the West, hanging out with, by the way, all those folks are our fellow classmates at Wharton, if you didn't catch the connection. We're business school classmates, and so all the names he cited were all fellow Wharton classmates from the batch of 2001. In the midst of all of that, how did Gandhi become an inspiration? And I think in just reflecting on and obsessing about this on your flight yesterday, you seem to have discovered two more little things to connect. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when you discover Bitcoin, you start reading about and studying up on it. It's just such a confluence of so many factors. There is economics factor of it, there is cryptography, there is mathematics, there is philosophy, there is theory of money. So it's really going down this rabbit hole. And in our space, we always joked, they kind of ignored us. Now they're kind of laughing at us. Now they're fighting us. So Gandhi's theme and arc was always there, And if you think about, more I was thinking, 15, 16, I started noticing that. You look at Gandhi Satya, truth, right? You have this underlying, but truth through mathematics. Do you trust a fiat that is being inflated by central banks year after year? Or you trust a system that was created of mathematics and cryptography, which is the ultimate truth in my a book. And then you look at Gandhi's concept of self-reliance. Bitcoin is all about self-reliance. You're in the system, you rely on yourself. There's not going to be someone bailing you out. System of decentralization. And connecting all these dots, I came out to a point where I've traveled to many countries. Have any of you ever heard any country where you use a terminology of 10 million as a word? Any country. No, you typically in the West you use 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000, 100 million, but nowhere 10 million. Nowhere. And it dawned on me that you have crore, which is 10 million. One Bitcoin is 10 million Satoshis. One Bitcoin is 1 crore. And I just connected it, the other day talking to the concierge. Like, we're talking about things and okay, 10 million. It's very interesting. I'm not saying, Satoshi Nakamoto is Indian, but whatever was due, definitely has been exposed to Indian culture and a Gandhi philosophy. Absolutely, I'm certain of that. A person or group of individuals that have created this. And frankly speaking, I was jogging, if Mahatma Gandhi would be alive, he would have been a Bitcoin maxi, totally. I guarantee you guys, decentralization, self-reliance, and truth. Absolutely. And who else would have been maxi? Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and all of those that started out the movements to fight the oppressor and going out and making a positive impact. So there's just a lot of undercurrents. And for me, it was to come to India on that day of a release to pay homage to these great men. It was really important for me. And the title of the book, And Then You Win, and it's really, and then we all win. And the next chapter is taking the winnings from Bitcoin and reinvest in entrepreneurs and funding the next generation of entrepreneurs that can go on and make wins and make a positive impact on the world.
Our seasoned partner Ultrahuman is back for a second time. I'm biased as the seed investor here, but their immensely loved brand is making waves globally. Ultrahuman is a health tech pioneer redefining how we track and improve our health. Their sleek titanium ring air and its new rare metal cousins accurately track sleep, movement, and recovery to deliver real-time health insights and personalized nudges. Ultrahuman is creating a unique health ecosystem built on top of the wearable data. It just launched Blood Vision in the US in addition to India, a blood testing service that offers a panel of over 100 longevity and chronic disease biomarkers with the convenience of an at-home test. They're also launching Ultrahuman Home globally for environment-aware analysis and sleep insights. Whatever your health fix, go sign up and experience being truly ultrahuman.
Super. No, George, kudos to that mission, and we'd all love to benefit from that. So we're cheering you on. We go back to the BitFury days. I know a common friend introduced you to Val, and you saw price movement. I get that. You did your market research. You saw the price jump. You saw geographic instability, and therefore you thought it's an interesting asset class. But both the guts to invest in BitFury, what did you see in Val? Like you're like not a typical founder. You're a co-founder who bought into the business in some sense. Happens all the time. Elon buys into most of his businesses, right? If he sees a great thing, you buy into it. It's kind of what you did, but what were the triggers for that? Why did you believe in Val's mission, especially a hardware business at that point of time on an asset class that's unproven? What gave you that crazy courage? And secondly, I think since we're in the flow of like trying to get as much of your journey covered, you then became the evangelist for this and took this idea to Silicon Valley. And one of your biggest cribs is that nobody got it, right? Why do you think that happened? Like even as, and they're like the pioneers of seeing new innovation, but even as late as 2013, 14, 15, not anybody was betting on BitFury. So what is the BitFury journey, early years of the journey like? And we'll come to the crypto shocks later.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a combination of things. What I really was impressed with Val, the founder, was his energy and his sort of vision of where he wanted to take this company. And this unequivocal certainty. You know, you sometimes meet meet founders, and they just know. You know, there's no plan B. There's just like plan A. Because they know these are the things, how things will turn out to be. And that energy and piercing eyes that kind of stayed with me really was made a great impression. And then once we sort of started digging in, it was not just Val. I realized he got together the most brilliant Ukrainian brains. The people that we had as technical guys, they were geniuses beyond the geniuses, you know. I mean, they were just the chip design guys that learn how to design chip off textbooks. When Bill Tai, who is one of the amazing founder angel investors, and his semiconductor background experience, he was LSI Logic, he was with all these sort of startup companies. When he looked at the design of the chip, of the first ASIC chip, BitFury design, and he spoke to the Ukrainian team that did it, he said, this is profound. You guys, had you gone to MIT or Stanford or Penn, you would have never designed the chip, but it was thinking outside of the box and being that brilliance that allowed them to design a Bitcoin chip that mined 600,000 Bitcoins, all right? That all the Andreessens and benchmarks of the world ignored and decided not to invest. But that's another story. But it was really Val and the team. You know, our chief security officer, CSO, he is very well known in circles of catching the most aggressive hackers. And he was the guy that, you know, you would go on a screen and he would be sort of running the Bitcoin code, and on the other hand, he would be catching the hackers. And the brilliance is so, you know, bet on brilliant people. And then what I realized, that all the youngsters that were there, you know, these were Ukraine's chess champions, physics champions, mathematics champions. I'm like, I know nothing about that, but if anything, I'm betting on the IQ power of this team. And that was the bet, and that's a bet that paid off.
Awesome. And in the when do you think the Valley eventually caught on? I mean, Anderson had a crypto fund eventually. Yeah. How long did it take for the Valley to catch up?
Listen, I mean, I appreciate also the Silicon Valley guys sitting there Here we come in, a team from Ukraine that does have a great sort of a chip. And yes, at that time we already had Bill Tai kind of vouching for us and bringing in. But it's a hardware business. Hardware business is very, very tough business. It's very capex intensive. One mistake, you set you back. So there were 20 or so competitors back then. So I totally understand. But we expected that we would roll in with this amazing product. At that time, we were mining 1,500 to 2,000 Bitcoins per day. Guys, I mean, we would be showing, and the Bitcoin blockchain is an open system, so you can just go and see it. There was a BitFury. There was a pool that we kind of ran. It was Ghash.io. I don't know how many of you remember, old-timers here. Sometimes the Ghash.io had easily like 40, 50%. The problem was decentralization when we moved out. We rolled in with this product, ASIC chips that were magnitude, and we'd go to Sequoia, we'd go to Andreessen, we'd go to Benjamin. We love you guys, but let us think about it, And then I realized that, you got to pivot, man. You cannot put baskets in sort of eggs in one basket, and that's why we pivoted east, and we started looking aggressively to east, and that sort of a bet paid off.
So you also get a lot of credit, and you talk about it a little in the book, that you guys were discussing these ideas sitting in the saunas at Kyiv, and then when you hosted some of these future of money, future of digital currency in Necker Island with Virgin's Richard Branson, you brought all sorts of people. You brought monks, you brought like financial wizards.
Central bankers, Fed Reserve central bankers, the regulators, Department of Justice senior folks, senators, on and on.
So were you, I've noticed it in my journey as well. I take credit a little bit for the first 5 years of our journey. It felt like you were educating every person you met on the street, right, on what venture capital can do in India. It's not that they weren't there, but it wasn't ever sold to Indians, right? And Indians didn't believe in the idea that venture capital can actually make money. Then they saw, when the pitch entailed that you would lose money 6 out of 10 times, they said, what kind of an idiot investor are you? And they would throw you out of the room, because no investors ever come and pitch to them the idea that you can lose money 6 out of 10 times upfront, right? So I'm just looking at your role as an evangelist. Like, is that your superpower, that your belief was so strong, or you had to be in these virgin territories and, no puns intended, or in these saunas without clothes to be able to be fully vested into this idea that this is the future?
Yeah, listen, if you look at the humanity and if you look at the progress, it was always started and implemented by a small group of individuals. And I was privileged to have journeyed with many Bitcoin OGs that came through different experiences, whether it was libertarians in America, or it was folks from South America, or in Asia, Africa, all over. But we were united by the same values and ideals. And as we moved on, I realized that the space was so early, we had to go and build it also. We had to make the regulatory, there was a lot of myths that were propagated by the establishment, so we had to address it head on. So we spent a lot of time and efforts and resources in Washington, D.C., in Brussels, educating the regulators, telling them about the Bitcoin blockchain, why the decentralized sort of ledger immutability was important, how it would sort of bring in prosperity to the world, make an impact. And in the process, we were also running and setting up these organizations, Blockchain for Good, Blockchain Alliance. We set up the Necker Summit. And by the way, also in the journey, it's also very important to have the right kind of brothers in arms or sisters in arms. And Bill Tai, this angel, he himself is a person that has been kind of angel funding. He's a kite surfer, so he brings all the athletes, so he kites and decides, we have an issue with the connection. Eric, why don't we do Zoom? Here's your first check, and we'll, the rest is history. Or he goes to Australia, and Melanie Perkins comes and pitches, and you know what? There is great disruption in a design. Why don't we, here's the first check. Let's do Canva. And on and on and on. This angel that has helped us in a journey. So whenever in the journey that is difficult, make sure you have the right people around you. And if there is no industry, go out and build it. If you're being fought with the various myths, go and address it head on. And that has always been sort of our motto, that we're building a company, but we're also building out the industry.
The Bill Tai sounds like an amazing guy, and obviously George's idea was that we should have him in the middle online here today, this evening, but the logistics were too complex. But would love to meet him sometime.
Absolutely.
And, first investor in Canva, first investor in Zoom, one of the first employees of TSMC. This guy's a legend.
He's a legend, for
and
sure.
he was an investor in BitFury as well. So there is this moment in your history which has obviously found a mention in the book. Your Val is on CNBC Squawk Box, and the person running the show is basically asking Val, so what does this thing do? And then Val shows this like little chip and says, this thing mints Bitcoin, right? And it was a seminal moment for both BitFury and the industry. Talk us a little bit through what happened from that seminal moment where like the world went gaga and Val became a hero, to suddenly you took this to production and you just had like your first internal crisis. We'll come to the external crises around how traumatic riding the Bitcoin wave feels like. But something happened internally, and then your competitors took advantage of it and you lost a little bit of ground. This was 2014 to 16 kind of era. That setback is something we would love the audience to hear a little bit about.
Yeah, so listen, as part of getting BitFury in a front line and in a headlines, we had this first trip to US, and once again, you got to follow your sort of signs. And it just happened. I was one of the founders of Kiev YPO Club in Ukraine, and through that I got to know people, and one of the people were CNBC producers. And I flew into New York with Val. By the way, it's the first trip that Val has ever made in the United States, and there was a big conference in New York. And I just reached out to one of the producers and like, wow, Bitcoin is a hot thing. Why don't you guys come in? So here I am. I know what Squawk Box is. It's first day of Val in the United States. At that time, his English was, it's okay. And his question was, what is this thing? And is this live? And I said, yeah, it is live, but don't worry, we'll get through it. So I remember that time, Hardeep Walia, our friend Motif, he was on CNBC all the time. So I called Hardeep from Hardeep, like, dude, like, you need to help. Like, George, don't worry about it. You just need to memorize a couple of one-liners and do it and show the product. And I, back then, Val had this chip, small BitFury chip, in a small plastic bag. And he was like, he pulled it out before the show. I'm like, dude, this is gonna look like crack cocaine. We cannot be showing, going on a Bitcoin, and this is the time when you have Silk Road and all this thing, and all of a sudden this, Ukrainian, Latvian guy comes in and waving a crack cocaine with Andrew Ross Sarkin and Joe Kerner, on the live show. So we made sure, in order for him not to lose the chip, he had few chips, and thank God, there were one-liners, and he pulled out this chip, they showed, and Andrew Ross Sarkin's like, it's like, this thing mines Bitcoin, and he said, yeah, this thing mines Bitcoin. It's like, wow, amazing. And Joe Kerner, I don't know how many of you know this guy, who is one of the old-timer CNBC guys. He was observing, since then he has become, like over the years, the Bitcoin maxi of all this sort of, so I'm kind of proud that maybe we have orange-pilled him at that point. So as we are growing and developing, we're riding the wave. Competition is falling sideways because we really had this brilliant team. In 2015, we put up this first immersion cooling data center. Now they're all like very sexy, and everybody talks about it. But basically, you're submerging your chips in a liquid solution. So you eliminate a lot of the air cooling. So you PUE, or your energy goes down to 102. You save a lot on capex. But we were the largest 3M company's producer of the solutions, and we launched 40 megawatt facility in December 2015. And we made, I think, crucial mistake. In 2015 December, we announced that we had a 16 nanometer chip. That was by far the industry. I mean, it was like the kind of Ferrari of the industry, and we showcased it on YouTube. It was not some kind of PR. We actually had a YouTube recording. And I think that kind of set up in motion a very strange sort of a situation where, we got a lot of orders, hundreds of millions of dollars, which was a lot of money back then. And come February, I'm flying to Hong Kong, and I get a phone call saying, you know what, the chip doesn't work. Like, what's going on? And it was just a realization that, it had a 99% yield on MPW, and when it went to full production, it went down to 1%. And that has never happened in history of, TSMC. And then you realize, okay, this is it basically, because we've taken the pre-orders and, this chip is not coming out. And that's, you kind of realize, okay, this may be over. Interestingly, once that information was there, I rallied up internal team, and we put everything we had, all our life savings, to buy us that extra 6 to 7 months in order to figure out what the fuck was going on. And that was the first big crisis that hit us, that in a way altered in a big way the market share.
What went wrong, just to finish that story, and how did you fix it, by the way?
So we flew into Taiwan, and one of the key advisors, first of all, Bill Tai brought senior advisory. So we had guys like Young San, the vice president of Samsung. He was semiconductor guru, working with Samsung, and he was head of Intel before in Korea, I believe. Jackson Hu was vice chair of UMC, and then president of UMC, and then TSMC from Taiwan. So we came to Taiwan to start figuring out what was going on. We went to the design house, we went to TSMC, and there was a working group created in order to start figuring out what was going on. And at some point, months are going in. For us, for TSMC, we are small fish. And I realized that, okay, this thing is not gonna go anywhere. So we had to go in and engage a prominent lobby firm in Washington, D.C. that reached out to John Negroponte, who was, ambassador luminary, who knew Dr. Morris Chang. And if you guys know anything about Taiwan, Taiwan is really Dr. Morris Chang that started TSMC. He's the legend. And John called him up and told the situation, and Morris was extremely surprised this thing happened, such a yield. He called up the head, and within 24 hours, this thing was accelerated, and sure enough, in a month's time, the new chips were produced.
Fascinating.
Yeah, we came out of it, but we lost the market share, and the company that kind of utilized that momentum, it's called Bitmain, and they have 85% market share, and their last valuation was at $80 billion. So this could have easily been us, easily. We had all the wherewithals, all the momentum, everything to be there, but under mysterious situation and circumstances, in 2016, our chip went to complete collapse. And when we were doing debug and discussion, there were clear instructions.
So your next book, my friend, should be a fiction, not so fictional fiction book, which becomes a Netflix spy thriller.
I'll tell you already that we're already talking to Netflix about making this a documentary.
Awesome.
And
good stuff.
Expect that as a next step.
This is a good time to talk about IDFC First Bank, our seasoned partner. IDFC First Bank has earned its reputation as one of India's most startup-friendly banks through its First Wings program, which provides dedicated mentorship and tailored financial solutions to help early-stage ventures scale effectively. Coincidentally, many of Blume's portfolio companies, much later stage, also partner with IDFC First Bank for their banking and financial needs. If you're well-funded and scaling, there are great lending and banking partners, and our portfolio companies would attest to that. So here, and by the way, random trivia, since he brought up so much and paid homage to Morris Chang at TSMC. I don't know if you know this crazy story that Morris Chang's ownership of TSMC was exactly 0% when TSMC started. He was hired as an employee, and then he clawed to 20% of TSMC, which is one of the world's largest chip makers. But anyway, so anything is possible, which is also George's motto. But coming to, you're mining away Bitcoins, you're seeing the value go up. Yeah.
2015, you're sitting on 300,000 Bitcoins. Okay, let's average that out even at $100,000 a pop. That's $30 billion as of today's market value. Obviously, you don't have all of those Bitcoins. If anyone didn't catch that look, yeah, he clearly doesn't have it. Now, what is this trade-off that you guys focused on? Like, why not just keep like the Bitcoins and stop mining and call it a day versus spawning the kind of ecosystem that you folks did, keeping alive, spawning out all these interesting companies? What is the thinking at that point? And then we'll come to the companies that you built out, because that's the finale of where BitFury has gone.
That's a very good question, and I don't have an answer to that. Because at a certain point when we had so much, if we believed in this, why not just say we mothball everything, thank you very much, and we're just gonna wait for a better time. Frankly, that's a beautiful observation that I've thought about it a lot.
I'm sure.
And we discussed it with Val, but you know what? It's such is life,
Just to the second part, which is, when you started, it's not super unusual, but it's unique in the sense that you took these bold bets of spinning out companies like your liquid cooling company, and started seeing that the value is not in servicing BitFury, but like each of them have their own life. Yeah. Like the European business had its own life, the American business had its own life. So you started building a little bit of a BitFury conglomerate of companies. Yeah. Has that paid off for you? Was that a great decision back then?
Yeah, I mean, listen, can't complain about the decision for sure. The goal for us setting up was to capitalize BitFury as a company on Western capital markets. Because our understanding was once you have an SEC prospectus with Bitcoin in there as a company sort of driving we have won that institutionalization phase. The beauty of the system was that as we were engaging, we saw an opportunity, and in this space you really need to move fast. I mean, you really need to drop everything and go. So we just happened to have this Canada operation that had about 40-50 megawatts, and then 2017, as Bitcoin was going up from 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, a friend of mine, that we met through Necker Island, Mark Vanderjys, he started the Tudo, which is a YouTube of China, exited out, and he was a Bitcoin OG. He said, guys, why don't we do an RTO on Canadian market, on TSX? So within 24 hours, we had a meeting with the top bankers in Canada. We had everything set up, and we raised capital. We listed something called Hot 8. So Hot 8, I don't know if you guys know, this is where Alan Turing cracked the Enigma code at Bletchley Park. It was in a hot number 8. So we named this company Hot 8. The IPO RTO was, book was like 50x oversubscribed. We listed it on Hot 8. Today, Hot 8 is a $6 billion company on NASDAQ. We still have a stake. Then we started up operation in US, BitFury US. And when the SPAC craze was happening in 2021, we brought in JP Morgan. We moved very fast, raised 500 million. And now Cipher Mining is our flagship entity. We still have a sizable investment there, and is doing Bitcoin mining, but really going big into AI factories. And it was 3,000 megawatts, so they just signed a $7 billion deal with Google. So it's about $8 billion company. And then others, we spun out. We had immersion cooling happening as technology. We spun it out, and that's being capitalized. We had AI chip companies spun it out. And
how many billion or multi-billion dollar companies have come out of this journey?
3 so far 3, but the web trajectory going, I think it's gonna be more. And you asked me, in terms of, was it sort of a plan to do that? The plan was to capitalize the companies, and we actually had plans to list BitFury. So we had, all the sort of a Goldmans of the world hired and ready to go, for U.S. market listing. We had Brian Brooks. Brian was the head of American regulator, OTC, or one of the, banking controller of currency. He was brought in as a Western executive to lead, and everything was great. And then, guess what? FTX happened, and the markets collapsed. So we shelved those plans. So in our business, you really need to move. It's sometimes, life is life is a marathon, but gotta know when to sprint. This is about our space. We really need to hustle. That's one. And second, we learned that, if you hang around the barber shop long enough, you're gonna get a freaking haircut, all right? So these were the two things that we learned in this journey, and it worked out well.
Awesome. So I wanted to touch upon, now what's common to everybody who's sitting in this room, who's ever, invested, played around, touched this asset class. Yeah. It's not for the faint-hearted, but everyone's smiling today. But if you go through the curve of how crypto movements have been, and the mothership, which is BTC, it feels like every dip comes out of a geopolitical crisis, or a fraud, or a scam, or theft, and every upswing comes with Paul Tudor Jones or Larry Fink or somebody rubber stamping the fact that this is legit, and of course now it's Donald Trump. So my point is this something that's going to continue, and at one level, and then what are your favorite crisis stories? Of course, the glory of owning whatever you have at 100 or 125K a Bitcoin is something you loudly and joyfully proclaim from every public stage every week. So George keeps reminding us on the Wharton class group, hey, it's 100K, hey, it's 125K. And so that's the easy part.
Soon it will be 1 million, and then it will be 10 million.
There you go. So we'll get you started on that, Rara. But if you go to the crisis, which is what everybody wants to learn from, what were the darkest moments, and how did you talk yourself out of it or walk yourself out of it? Give us some fun stories on that. But also, is that the theme for this asset class? Is it simply is it the new gold, or is it, because even gold doesn't go through these shocks because of the way that market is structured. So how does one read this market as an outsider or as an insider? What are the tips for the next 5-10 years?
The comfort level of owning a Bitcoin is disproportionate into amount of time you dedicate studying it. This is the ultimate DYOR. And to many people that don't have time, I've been saying for the last 12 years, put in 1-2% of your liquid position into this and let it sort of ride. Put in a position, if 1-2% position worries, you're gonna be waking up in the middle of the night checking the price, then don't, put 0.5%. If 5% you're fine, then go and do it. But I guarantee you, once you start going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and learning about how it's constructed and such, you will be putting more and more into this. Now, it's an asymmetric bet. And it's not a bet on Paul Tudor Jones coming or BlackRock, and of course the institutionalization has played a big part. But it really is the bet against the global central banks printing more fiat. It's a simple bet. It's a directional bet. Yes, it will be volatile. By the way, the volatility has come down tremendously, by the way. But you're betting against humans' lack of discipline. Look at the global, you look at Elon, God bless. I mean, when he started Doge, I knew that that was not gonna go anywhere. You kidding me? He's fighting up against the establishment that has massive allocations from budgets in various places like Alabama, Mississippi, and Oregon, so on and so forth. There is no way. So if you trust that the government will be living within the means and within budgets, and the central banks will not be printing money, don't buy Bitcoin. Don't. It's not going to go anywhere. But unfortunately, the world is completely different. And that's why it has shined, and it will continue to do so. Look at the global debt levels. Look at the global budget deficits. It's a one-directional bet. And the guys like Paul Tudor Jones and Larry Finks, they have come to it not because, okay, Bitcoin, it's because they connected those dots. And that is a bet on that. Or as Chamath likes to say, it's a schmuck insurance, Very much so.
Schmuck insurance is a nice way to put it. So let's come to the book. What prompted the book? Not surprisingly, now that you said it, of course it's clear. 21 lessons. So obviously it's homage to George and to Bitcoin that your lucky number is the number of lessons. And which lesson, was the hardest to learn, and which is the one that keeps coming back the most, if you can think of those two answers. But broadly, the bigger question is, why was the book important? It felt like it was brewing for some time, and suddenly it seems to have burst out of your head. So let's talk through that, and then we'll talk about the $1 million story of Bitcoin.
The space has evolved through so many stages, and we've seen in our space lots of great reporters and journalists write, but no one really, an insider that kind of has seen these sort of stories. And there's so many anecdotes and stories, whether it's hackers or, whether it is kind of surviving all the crypto winters, or, whether it's sort of putting up these, various organizations, baking them in the midst of jacuzzi sessions. And it's touching so many folks that were in a journey together with us. So I felt it was time to put it down. In a way also it was a way for me to convey the true costs of entrepreneurship and lessons from my standpoint to the future generation of tech entrepreneurs, because so I'm entering a stage where I'm very much engaged in looking to mentor and give back and take the crazy experiences that we had, distill them, and grow and raise, in a way, bloom hundreds of other sort of entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. No, I love the spirit, love the vision. Quickly browsed through it, took some help from AI, but it feels like a fascinating read, cover to cover. I just got my copy inscribed by Mr. Kikvadze this morning. Sadly, the book's not widely available yet. I asked him, why don't you carry a crate of them? He said, look, I just don't have enough copies. Let them buy it on Amazon. So you'll have to wait your turn. I'm the one lucky owner in India of this book. Let's finish on the high note. You went on CNBC US a week or 10 days ago, and I think you shared the clip on our class group and actually told the anchor this is going to be $1 million. And not maybe, will be $1 million. What gives you the confidence? I know you said it will get there because of all the reasons. How soon will it happen? And more importantly, when you say $1 million or 10 million, and you're competing for just sheer energy, resources, and where the world is going with AI needs at this point, what is the infrastructure we think we need to put in place to keep riding on this, growth of Bitcoin as it marches towards the inevitable 21 million Bitcoin mark?
I mean, if you look what has been happening last 10 years and how profound has been the digitalization of resources, and you look at the value of, say, Uber versus the taxi, of Amazon versus the retails and stuff, you will come to a conclusion that yes, there is a analog store of value. It's called gold, but then there is a digital store of value. And if you look at Bitcoin on many components, it bypasses gold. And if you look at a very important aspect of it, if you look at gold, if the price of gold goes to 10,000 tomorrow, a lot of miners will start switching into mining gold, and the annual emission of gold, which is at 2%, it will go to 4%, 5%, so on and so forth. Bitcoin today, annual emission is already less than gold. It's 0.8, and in 3 years it will be 0.4. So it's becoming more and more scarce asset. And if you look at capitalization of gold, it's sort of a $30-ish trillion, and Bitcoin still at 2.5. There's a lot of catch-up, There's a lot of catch-up. So there's not going to be a catch-up. There's going to be also flipping of that. And I think that will happen, in my so humble opinion, in the next 5 years. And that will be predicated on the global financial crisis, debt crisis that will be propelled by countries defaulting. If you look at the United States, already the interest rate payments is the biggest sort of item that there is by far, you know. So that is in profound, is really sort of, you have this kind of escape velocity that's keeping worse and worse. So what's going to happen? There's going to be a decrease of interest rates, there's going to be risk on, there's going to be additional push towards global economies going into the QE, and you will have propellant for Bitcoin. So this is just a formula that will work out in
It's a great scenario paint, and thanks for that. And I think people needed to hear a version of that for them to know whether this is possible, why will it happen. So thanks for doing that for us. No, it's been a fascinating chat. I'm going to let you go soon. I'm just going to do a quick rapid fire round for fun. And what is that, by the way?
So this is Julia Chudovsky. She was an artist that in 2014 and 15 was inscribing a Bitcoin artwork. It's a very OG thing. And this is a cold wallet with the, with the encryption there. And this thing, which, I bought for, I think $100, it's worth a couple $1,000s now. And I wanted to give it to you as a gift.
Oh, thank you.
And this will be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Very generous, very generous. Thanks for that generosity. Hopefully it'll pay for LP commitment into Blume someday.
Sure.
Yeah. So quick rapid fire with
Sure.
you to wrap this session up, and then we're going to continue having fun chatting about this with the lovely audience here. So Bitcoin at $20 versus Bitcoin at $100,000. Which took more courage to buy?
Oh, clearly at $20.
And today you don't feel the need to feel nervous about it because you think it's a stable asset with a much
Correct.
less
Bitcoin is, early days it was like a Mowgli. It was a little kid growing up, all these dangerous animals around. But now Bitcoin has grown. It's a matured boy. It's got a panther and a bear and all the animals fighting for it. So yeah,
You've survived multiple crypto winters.
Yeah.
What do you think separates the founders who survive these winters from those who don't?
Doing the right thing. Over and over, your word is your everything. And BitFury was built on this foundation of trust. In bad times, we restructured, we never let anyone down, all the suppliers, and coming with that attitude to do things right. That was very important.
What is the worst startup advice you got, which sounded smart but actually is super dangerous?
Using our Bitcoins to pay for CapEx. I mean, at some point we had 600,000 Bitcoins. Now we're down to, a couple hundred. Me also being ambassador of Bitcoin, there was a company called Zappo. They issued a credit card linked to Bitcoin, so you could go and pay with, Bitcoin. So, me liking to kind of promote industry, to go to dinners, and the other day I looked at the bill, 10 Bitcoins here, 12 Bitcoins there, 8 Bitcoins there. It's sort of a thousands. And listen,
it's $1 million tab. No, sorry, I'm rubbing it in.
Easily. So, yeah.
So the CNBC moment, this thing mines Bitcoin. Was that scripted or it was just came spontaneously?
No, I think that was that kind of came out of Val,
Yeah.
And Andrew was like, this thing, and Val just in a simple way, yeah, this thing.
I know you may or may not have personal issues with Sam Bankman-Fried, but he started FTX. You guys started BitFury, about the same journey. Why did they collapse, and why do you keep going?
He came way after us.
Okay.
So, we started 2012, 13, he came. I think it's, listen, at the end of the day, it really boils down to integrity. It really is the foundation of it all. You cannot build a house on a shaky foundation. And in this business, when there was a lot of flakiness and there was a lot of uncertainty, if you didn't have a right foundation and a right sort of a bond and trust, everything else is fluff.
If you had to complete the sentence, in 10 years, people will regret not building Dash. And you're talking about the crypto or blockchain world. What would that be, you think?
People will, I would just say generally, people will always regret not investing in themselves and in their education.
Okay, great. And one thing you'd change about Bitcoin, if at all, if you met Satoshi Nakamoto? What would you tell him?
I would thank him, for
Awesome.
unleashing this major innovation.
And the last evergreen question, who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
We may never know, or we may know, but it doesn't matter. It's who invented the fire, right?
Very profound. And, just maybe a parting word for where you're at sitting today, Mumbai, speaking to the Indian ecosystem. A lot of them have given the same kind of passionate 10 years to understanding the asset class. What should we be focusing on, given what little you know about the regulatory system out here? We're going to have a little bit of a chit chat after we're done with the podcast. But broadly, what do you think Indians can do or should invest in outside of simply buying Bitcoin in this next 10 years or so?
I mean, it always fascinated me, and on this journey I've been to 80, 90 countries and meet with regulators, and it always fascinated that a country of India with so many scientists, mathematicians, an affinity of gold, Bitcoin is not thriving here. It's like natural that it should be thriving here. It's just connecting the dots in this new digital age. So I hope that at some point there is this embrace of it, because sort of Trump and the team are making crypto sort of a crypto capital of the world. You have major push in various pockets in UAE, for example, in other places, and I hope that at one point there is this realization to unleash that innovation in India as well.
Super, George. I hope you enjoyed this chat and as much as I did, and
Absolutely.
I hope the audience loved it too. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot. A big hand for George Kikvadze.
Thank you very much.
A very humble friend from Georgia, and congrats again. Thank you. And for one last time, it says, and then you win. For folks that's all you have to remember. Whenever it's out on Amazon India, please get your copy. And that's the end of our podcast.